Yes, it's hour 2 of the show, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I am Sean Stiers and Jesse Stiers coming out of Blackout in the YouTube channel. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
There's a lot to get to, so we better get going.
We ignited the chat as soon as we went into that last break. It was just like a maelstrom in there. Everybody went crazy. Second college football playoff rankings come out tonight. Where will the Irish be when the rankings are announced?
Easy, simple. They'll move up one spot to number 9. I think they'll jump BYU. I think everyone in the world will have their hair on fire that Notre Dame is ahead of BYU. But yeah, I think that they'll be number 9, and they'll be right on the edge of that coveted 8 spot and hosting a game.
Is it really coveted? I mean, I realize you get to host the game rather than go on
tougher
the road.
Matchup, right? Is that what you would maybe say? Or
yeah, I mean, because the fact that you get an 8-9, a little bit tougher matchup in that first round game, and then if you win that game, you play the number 1 seed. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's great that you get to host, but I still am a little leery of the fact that you would have to play the 1 seed.
Well, I'm selfish and want the home game. That doesn't mean that they couldn't move up to 7, 6,
yeah.
And you never know how the whole picture is going to shake out at the end.
Somebody just posted something. Stymie says 8 in front of Oregon, who's living on preseason AP hype. I agree with the second part, living on the AP preseason hype. They just got out of Iowa with a win, and by the way, by the skin of a safety that started the game. I don't know how much of that game you got.
Did someone tell the game would be close? Maybe to take the Iowa spread.
You're going to have to say that again. You were chopping up a little bit when you said that.
I said, did anyone close to you tell you to take the Iowa spread?
I don't think I remember hearing you say that. I don't remember anything about an Iowa spread.
Okay.
Must not have. I take it you took the Iowa spread. You must have said that in the spread option last Thursday.
I did.
All right. Should have followed more of your advice in that. Yeah, I do. I like Josh says, I think the rankings come out an hour earlier tonight, if I remember right. So at some point within the next couple weeks, I'm sure it's going to be halftime of a basketball game, which they do, a lot once the rankings start coming out. But I agree. I think they're going to be 9. I don't think Oregon is going to drop because they still just do have 1 loss. I think it's going to be hard for Notre Dame to start moving past any of these teams in front of them until they start, they all lose another game. Again, Oregon just got by against Iowa. That game, now it's what's interesting for Oregon, again, like how much of this is skewed by those initial rankings last week, but as of right now anyway, both USC and Washington are ranked, and I definitely don't think that USC is going to be a gimme game for Oregon. I think that that's going to be a pretty competitive game as well, and I think it's probably going to challenge them from an offensive standpoint. Like they're going to have to score more to beat USC, something that they haven't really had to do so far, like with the exception of Indiana, for example. And that, obviously they couldn't keep up with Indiana when it was all said and done. But yeah, I don't think it's going to change much for Notre Dame. They'll move up 1 spot. They'll be number 9, so they'll inch up. But again, some of these other teams will lose some games here and there, and so like as this thing goes on over the next 3 weeks, they'll have more chances to move up. But I think they'll be 9th this week.
Does Texas or Oklahoma jump BYU?
Ooh, I think Texas could. That's kind of the question. How far is BYU going to fall? BYU just showing that they had no offense. And, by the way, if you remember listening to me, I gave Bear Bachmeier some advice. You've got to get rid of number 47. I'm sorry. You can't be a quarterback and wear that number. You're not going to score any points. And that's what happened. But yeah, I think Texas definitely has a chance to move past BYU. Irish for Life 99 wants to know if I made it to the Sports Grill Miami Lakes for the Miami game. I did not, because my Miami schedule ended up just being a train wreck because of
we loved it.
Well, we were delayed getting out of South Bend because of storms in Dallas. So I was in Dallas for, I don't even remember. It was, I think, at least 8 hours, there. And then I couldn't fly into Miami because all the flights were being rerouted and rebooked and all this stuff. I had to fly into Fort Myers, which is on the Gulf side of Florida. So I got in there, got in at around 2:30 or 3 to my hotel, slept for a few hours, rented a car, drove across the state to Miami. So I was not able to do anything extra besides getting some coffees from Dunkin' and getting over there and getting into the game. I guess I did actually. I tried to take a nap. I went to a movie theater and tried to nap a little bit in the afternoon. Never really fell asleep, though. So who would your top 4 teams be? What would your top 4 like? Are you rubber stamping what the committee gave us last week, or would yours look any different this week? Ohio State, Indiana, A&M, and Alabama in that order. What would your top 4 look like?
This is tough for me. I think that there's something deserving in being the national champion, sticking at number 1 and kind of continuing to get the respect of holding that spot until you kind of lose type situation. And it's not like Ohio State has looked bad in really any of their games. I wouldn't say they played anyone outside of that first game against Texas. I think Texas A&M and IU have a little bit better of a resume. But again, defending national champ, they haven't given you any signs to remove them from number 1. I kind of fall in that honor and respect. So I'd keep Ohio State at 1. I think Texas A&M at 2 because I think the SEC is the hardest conference. They're undefeated in the hardest conference. And then I'd have IU 3, Alabama 4.
Yeah, I would keep Alabama 4. I'm not completely sold on them, but really once you get to that number 4 spot, I think that's where like a lot of them are interchangeable. My top 3, I think that there is a very strong case for Texas A&M at number 1 because they have 3 road wins over ranked teams this season. And among those 3 teams, like that's more than the other 2, Ohio State and Indiana combined. The fact that A&M has gone on the road, obviously including the win at Notre Dame. They beat Missouri on the road this past weekend. They beat LSU when they were still ranked. So, I mean, like at the time of that they played the games anyway, they've beaten 3 ranked teams on the road. So I would put A&M number 1. I would have Ohio State number 2. It is very, very marginal, though, because like last week I was saying there was a case for Indiana at number 1. I think there's a case for any of these 3 teams at number 1.
Same.
But because of the fact that Indiana did struggle more on the road against a Penn State team that is still just reeling right now, I would have them at number 3 behind A&M and Ohio State, and then I would have Alabama at number 4. All right. So I got to find my audio here and get this ready to go. So, Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi had some things to say this week about this week's matchup with Notre Dame at his press conference. Here is Pat Narduzzi.
This is a must-win for this team when it comes to something.
Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I gladly get beat 103 or 110 to 10 in that game. They can put 100 up on us as long as we win the next 2 after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can.
I like how you hear whoever the reporter is there just cranking on the keyboard, typing up that quote. I would gladly lose 103 or 110 to 10 because it's not a conference game. What would you think if you heard your coach ever say something like that before a game you were getting ready to play?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go out there and give 100%. It's just ridiculous what Narduzzi was saying. Like, I understand it's not an ACC game, and your path right now, you believe, is the ACC championship and going and winning that game. But it's still Notre Dame at home against a top 10 team in the country. You can't say that you can't get fired up and you want to win that game. And I think there has to be a little bit of context. The question before mentioned that in his last 2 games, he's lost like a combined 110 to 3 or wherever. That's where that came from. But still, it doesn't matter because every game your intent should be to win a game. You should never go into a game and concede. Well, I don't care if we lose because it's not an ACC game. Like, what? Who
Right.
wants to go out and play for you in a top 10 matchup at home where game day is coming to? Aaron Donald's jersey is being retired. Like, there is so much going on. And for you as the head coach to say, well, I don't care if we lose 100-0. Like, it's the worst thing I've heard. I would not want to play for a coach like that.
And I mean, there's obviously some sideways shade at Notre Dame because
I mean, that's the root of it. He wanted to basically say they're not. It was just
they're
like
not in the
Texas Tech.
conference. Right.
He wanted to make a point that they're not in a conference, so why should their game matter at the end of the day?
Right. Exactly. And everyone's coming after Notre Dame with the independence and everything. And look, because as you mentioned, this is obviously an overcompensating deflection mechanism for Pat Narduzzi, because Notre Dame is just living right there in his head and not charging any rent. He is 0-4 against him since he's been at Pitt, and only one of the games has been close. I talked about it in the first hour, that 2018 game when the Irish won by 5 with Ian Book as the quarterback, and they were just dropping 8 into coverage all day, confusing Book. He was having, issues with it. Notre Dame was having a hard time moving the football. They only win by 5 points. The Irish have won the other 3 meetings since Pat Narduzzi has been the head coach at Pitt by a total of 105 points after winning 58-7 when they played 2 years ago, So, like, he despises Notre Dame going back to his Michigan State days, maybe even before that. Remember, this is a guy who worked for Mark D'Antonio. And then, like all these conspiracy theorists last week, we were talking about how this committee favors Notre Dame, and you've got a couple former head coaches, including D'Antonio, who are in love with Notre Dame and all this kind of stuff. Mark D'Antonio has no love for Notre Dame, and, Pat Narduzzi doesn't have any of it either. The roots go back. Like, these are 2 Notre Dame rival stepchild programs, Michigan State and Pittsburgh, and Narduzzi is leading one of them. He has always hated Notre Dame, and he has no real way to deal with it because he has lost all these games to Notre Dame. Now, I do expect this game to be closer than 58-7, but Narduzzi is trying to find a way to kind of compartmentalize and bury this thing as deeply as he can, because he struggles when it comes to facing the Fighting Irish. Fill in the blank. Narduzzi also calling Notre Dame America's team is blank.
It's another subliminal shot, and I had to think about it to understand why. But when you think of America's team and the Dallas Cowboys, they got that name because they're on every American TV every weekend, whether you liked it or not. And that's basically what he's taking a jab at here is, well, Notre Dame's independent. They have that NBC deal. They're on everyone's TV. They're America's team. So again, Narduzzi found another way to wrap this thing around to, well, Notre Dame's not in a conference. Notre Dame has that mega TV deal. That's why they're not in a conference. That's why they're America's team. And so again, he can't help himself when the microphone is set in front of his face, even though he gets his butt whooped by Notre Dame every single time.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious because, he knows that, they're essentially, they're the golden child or one of the golden children of college football. And that's not what he's got at Pitt. And I think that it's just hilarious that, again, Notre Dame is so deep in Pat Narduzzi's, Notre Dame has invaded Pat Narduzzi's soul, and all he can do is trying to find these, little things to throw back. Irish for Life 99 in the YouTube chat says Narduzzi equals Signetti. I don't think that they're too far off. They're part of the same tree. And now I think you can throw, obviously, Joey McGuire into that conversation as well after the stuff that the Texas Tech head coach was saying yesterday. So, yeah, Pat Narduzzi loves to hate Notre Dame. And I'm sure, I wonder if you're him, does he really revel in the opportunity to face Notre Dame and, get up for the fact that maybe they can actually beat them? Or is he like, oh man, we got to face Notre Dame again? What do you think is his mentality? Because you go back to that quote where he's talking about, where he's sounding off at a press conference for the whole world and his and his team to hear you're just not sending the right message to anybody by saying those kind of things. So it just feels like a lot of self-defeatism from Pat Narduzzi, trying to find the things to say, but he just puts his foot in his mouth every time.
Yeah, I think that, honestly, it's kind of his coping mechanism at the end of the day, and a way to kind of spin the situation where he can feel good about making fun of Notre Dame, but also taking some shellackings from Notre Dame at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a defensive coping mechanism to find a way to spin it where he doesn't look like the dunce in this situation.
But that's how he ends up looking when it's all said and done. D-Rock Irish in the YouTube chat has a quote from Ari Wasserman from On3. He says, if you're trying to sustain success at a program, beating Notre Dame in your home stadium should be almost even more important than an ACC game. One would think so.
Like, if you're saying Notre Dame's America's team, wouldn't you want to beat America's team no matter what it took? No matter if they were in the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, like they're a blue blood national program. You should always want to beat a team like that.
Yeah, because like here's what Pitt has left on their schedule right now, and they are in the running at this point to be in the they're in the running to get into the ACC championship game. They are currently in a 4-way tie for first place in the conference, and according to the conference standings, they are in third place as of right now. But they have Notre Dame, obviously, this week, and then they follow that with Georgia Tech, a team that is still ranked right now, and Miami. So if they run the table in those 3 games, obviously the Notre Dame game, as he said, doesn't count for the ACC standings, but that is a huge feather in their cap, and they only have 2 losses right now. You beat 3 ranked teams in a row, you build yourself a pretty strong case to possibly get an at-large bid in terms of the college football playoff. You lose to Notre Dame, regardless of what happens in the, you've got to win the conference championship game at that point. But you beat Notre Dame and you win these next 3 games against ranked opponents, you've got just as good a shot as anybody to get an at-large bid in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if you go undefeated and you've got all these ranked wins, one being Notre Dame, and then you go on and lose a 1-point game in the ACC championship, like there's still a chance for you. But dropping down to a loss right now, there's no chance. And so I saw someone bring that up as well. It's like, point blank, you try to win every game, no matter what. You play to win every game. And your coach coming onto the mic at the beginning of the week and saying, basically, not that we're not playing to win, but we don't care if we don't win. That's beyond crazy to say.
Troubling. Yes. We'll take a break. When we come back, by the way, Alan Green, your guy, former Auburn athletic director, former Notre Dame baseball player, the athletic director at Pitt right now. You're going to look him up.
Oh, really?
Maybe go hang out with Alan Green after you
berated him in Omaha.
You didn't berate him. I thought you guys got along pretty well in Omaha.
We did get along. I don't know if he'll remember me, but
just remind him. Just tell him I was the guy who kept forgetting who you were. I'm sure that'll jar his memory.
I'm sure our guy Michael Birch will be there too. So there's a chance that those two might be in the same room.
There you go. That's right. So we were talking about the Pittsburgh Pat Narduzzi shade, and the ACC had an interesting tweet. ACC football tweeted this out. They posted this graphic, and at the top of the graphic, I put it up here on the YouTube screen. It says, "Who you got?" And it's Team A versus Team B. On one side, they both have the same record, 7-2. And on one side, it is in the head-to-head. Team A has a win. Team B has a loss. Team A has 3 top 25 wins. Team B has 1. Team A has FPI 35 wins, 4. Team B has 1. And then strength of record, according to ESPN, Team A's is 17. Team B's is 13. Well, of course, they don't say who the teams are. But Team A is Miami, Team B is Notre Dame, and they're trying to make the case for Miami over Notre Dame, even though the College Football Playoff Committee obviously had Notre Dame ranked 8 spots ahead of the Hurricanes in spite of the season opening loss to Miami. So what did you think when you saw this? What do you think of all this? The ACC trying to make its case out there on the social medias for Miami over Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think I might have said this last week, so I'll echo it again. I just love how BYU, Texas Tech, ACC, Virginia fans, all these people now have some prominent opinion when we still have 3 games left to play. Like, why do we exert all this energy when everyone still has to play 3 more games and the final rankings have to come out? Like, that's the thing that's crazy to me. And then the second thing that's crazy is, who does the ACC think they are turning, I get it. Notre Dame's not a part of the ACC for football, but they are everything else. And they, as a university, still provide a lot to the ACC. And so who is the ACC to just throw up this graphic and say, who do you got? And then at the very bottom say, oh, well, it definitely should be Team A. Like, why are you throwing shade at a team, university, that's still predominantly in your conference for everything else? And again, a big reason why there's still stability and structure in the ACC in general.
Notre Dame's the reason the ACC still exists right now. If Notre Dame is not part of that, not part of, like, the fact that, obviously Notre Dame propped up, and without Notre Dame, the ACC network is never created. And the fact that all these Notre Dame road games against these ACC teams end up on TV, whether it's ESPN or ABC or wherever it happens to be. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Like, Notre Dame, even though they might not be a full-fledged member of the ACC, still props up the conference quite a bit, just by being involved to the extent that they're involved. So, I mean, even beyond that, there are a couple more things, because obviously head-to-head is part of the deal. And obviously the ACC is trying to spell out their case with their resume. But, look, Miami isn't a conference. They're in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And you know what place they're in their own conference right now? 7th. They're in 7th place in their own conference right now. So you're trying to make a case for Miami in 7th place, not even in contention to get into the conference championship game. Right now, you're trying to tell us that Miami, because of a factor head-to-head, that they deserve to be ahead of Notre Dame right now. And as Joe pointed out, the fact that they've got 2 losses to unranked teams. Yeah, both of their losses are worse than Notre Dame's losses. Those are all part of the resume. And I mean, again, like, if you want to go back to this whole thing, I'm new to this whole conference thing, but as of right now, Georgia Tech is in 1st place in the ACC. Virginia is in 2nd place in the ACC. You know who has head-to-head wins over both of those teams? NC State. But NC State doesn't vault to the top of the rankings just because they happen to beat both of those teams, because there are other factors and other games that are played. So a head-to-head is part of the resume. It is part of the equation. It is not the end-all, be-all, especially now when you have 2+ months. Everyone has played more than 3/4 of their season right now, and other factors come into play. Notre Dame continues to trend in the right direction. Miami trending in the wrong direction as we speak right now. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it's like, just look at the last month of the body of work. Miami trending down, Notre Dame trending up. Like, that matters. Where you are at the beginning of the season is not where you are at the end of the season.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Brian Kelly is suing LSU to receive the $53 million he's owed by the school under the terms of the contract. LSU reportedly offered him a one-time lump sum buyout of $25 million when they relieved him of his duties that Kelly refused, while LSU says it's firing Kelly for cause now, which they believes negates the large buyout.
It's messy. It's so messy. It's beyond messy. I was reading stuff today where basically, when they first sat down with them, technically who fired him didn't have the authority to fire him. And so Brian Kelly should have technically still been like on the job. And like, what cause did Brian Kelly have that magically just appears? You know, like I get it. He wasn't coaching well, but there wasn't cause. It's not like he, you know, punched a player or, you know, broke any rules or anything. He just didn't perform to your standards. So
Right.
I just think it's really funny that LSU just thought that they could blow this whole thing up and there'd be no repercussions and they could just get out of this, you know, guaranteed money. And I just think the more that they fight this and the more legality that gets involved, one, it makes your program look bad. And two, I just think it's going to favor Brian Kelly more and more. Just if you said you fired him, give him his money and send him on his way.
Yeah. I mean, did they really think that they could get away with like, look, we know that we've got this in your contract, but here's $25 million and we'll do this in one lump sum. You can have it all right now instead of prorated over the next few years. We'll just do it now. And, you know, you just take this $25 million and you go away. Who in their right mind would go for that?
Who would turn down half the money they're owed when it's in millions?
Exactly. Like, we're not talking about $100,000. We're talking about more than $50 million. And they actually thought he was just going to walk away. I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think being a bad recruiter or playing too much golf or being an emotionally detached head coach is a justifiable show cause. I just don't know what they think they have to stand on in this whole thing, unless they've really got something, you know, that they think that they've got in their back pocket. It just doesn't feel like it's going to work out in their favor, though.
It's hilarious. And it's just even more funny that Brian Kelly's at the center of it all, you know? So I'm curious to see more details that come out. But again, I just don't really see a way that Brian Kelly doesn't win in this situation.
I don't either. And as someone just said, Archer in the YouTube chat says, I believe they're going to try to invoke a morality clause. That is part of the deal. You know, what exactly that is and what they think that they've got on him, I don't know. But the bigger picture is this is just such a bad look for LSU.
Right. Like, who would want to come coach here after this?
Yeah. You fire a coach not even 4 years into his contract with this huge buyout that was obviously very big. And so, like, the AD fires the head coach, and because of the fact that the financials of this deal, you know, were so out of whack, the athletic director ends up getting fired, you know, like within less than a week of Kelly being fired. So your head coach and your AD both get whacked. Like, if you're a good coach, like if you're Lane Kiffin, would you want any part of LSU with all this going on when, like, you can sign whatever, and knowing that if LSU, you know, thinks that it's not going the way they want it, they can just get rid of you and they're not even going to try to honor what it says in your contract? It just, like, it's trending in the right or in the wrong, very wrong direction for LSU right now.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that they meant to fire him after that Texas A&M game, or do you think it was heat of the moment? Everyone was pissed. There's a lot of boosters and money, you know, people of influence that are mad. And, like, you get what I'm saying here? Like, do you think that they really meant to fire him after that Texas A&M game, or it just happened and they're like, well, we got to go with this. Now we got to figure out how to find, you know, $52 million in guaranteed money.
Yeah, I know. Like, it had obviously been building, and I think the biggest, like, hearing the stuff coming out of there, the fact that those other coaches, Saban, Miles, and Orgeron, all won their national championships in their first, was in their first 3 years or first 4 years. Obviously, this was 4 for Brian Kelly. And as soon as he lost that Texas A&M game, they obviously found out that wasn't going to happen. So I think that pushed a lot, you know, and like from things that I had heard, like there were, you know, like donors and boosters in their suites in the stadium who were literally going around, you know, like trying to get commitments from other donors and boosters, like how much you going to kick in to get rid of Brian Kelly, you know, that kind of thing, you know?
Right.
So,
that's what I mean. Like, I feel like all these people
very
conspired
heat of
after
the
the
moment,
game.
emotional. Like if you step back a little bit from the disappointment, maybe you don't quite sink yourself quite as hard. But the other thing is, like, when you look at these buyouts, when you look at the buyout that Brian Kelly had, you look at the buyout that James Franklin had, you've already got college football coaches making a lot of money What I wonder is, do athletic directors, with all the money that's being, and all the money and resources that are being committed between the revenue sharing and, the NIL and all this, all this money that is coming in from different places just for the players themselves, like, I think that they're going to end up restructuring these contracts so that these coaches are getting more per year, and the buyouts become less
Smaller.
back end. Yeah. So that they don't have to
Like
worry.
5-year deals, more upfront, or sorry, more in the yearly salary, but not as much
Right.
guaranteed anymore.
And also more incentive based, and that's how some of these
yeah,
are structured as well, where it's like
8+ wins, 10+ wins.
Like Cignetti has a very incentive based on, if you get to the college football playoff, it's this. If you get to the semifinal, it's this much more. And there are also, different escalators in his contract that are like, if I get to the college football playoff semifinal and for whatever reason I'm dismissed within X amount of time, the buyout goes up and those kind of things. So I think those kind of structures are going to be a lot more common going forward, where you just have a lot more incentive-based stuff for these coaches and less just straight up guaranteed money without any performance. So Michael in the YouTube chat, going back to Miami, says, does anyone predict Miami will win out, or do we think that they'll drop one more? They play NC State coming up this week, and NC State has been the giant killer because, again, they have wins over the top two teams in the conference right now in both Georgia Tech and Virginia. So Miami has NC State, Virginia Tech, and then they finish at Pittsburgh. By the way, someone else asked who the other two ranked wins were, and those were USF and Florida State. So I'm glad you brought that up, because technically, even though the ACC is trying to claim those as ranked wins, neither one of those teams are ranked right now. And for college football playoff committee purposes, the ranking only matters at the time, at the time the rankings are coming out. It doesn't matter what the rankings were back in September, for example, when Miami played USF. USF is not ranked now, so that does not count as a ranked win as far as the college football playoff committee is concerned.
Yeah, unfortunately, when Notre Dame beats Pittsburgh, it won't count as a ranked win, because I don't think Pittsburgh will get re-ranked again.
Right, exactly. Do you think Miami wins out, though? I think it's going to be the toss-up is going to be that Pitt game at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a couple tough games. I think they'll lose another one between NC State and Pitt.
I do too. I think they've got one more loss.
And that's what's so funny to me is all these teams want to cry. And it's like, okay, you're Virginia and Louisville and you cried last week. Look what happened. You lost in the next week. Why don't we wait until the season's all done before we start crying, before you have, the opportunity to embarrass yourself or stub your toe again?
John Christopher, our old Western PA guy, says Miami loses to Pitt. He is going all in on that. Thank you for the Veterans Day, Brian. Brian writes, I believe he says. And again, we said it in the first hour at the top of the show. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. What were you getting ready to say there, Jess?
Nothing important.
All right. You sure about that? It's always important. Wake Up the Echoes comes your way at the top of the hour here on Sports Radio WSBT, the Notre Dame program. Some interviews coming up on that show. I'm not sure exactly who they've got on today, but Wake Up the Echoes every Tuesday here on WSBT. And don't forget, it is Notre Dame at Pittsburgh this Saturday at noon. You will hear the radio call here on Sports Radio WSBT and the Notre Dame Radio Network, including the Odyssey app, AUD-ACY. Game day show live from 8 to 11 Eastern time this Saturday morning. Join Tim, Jim, Eric, and Tyler. Their guests this week include former Notre Dame All-American and recent College Football Hall of Fame inductee, quarterback Terry Hanratty, and former Fighting Irish offensive lineman Trevor Ruland as well. So that's the game day show, 8 to 11 this Saturday, leading into Notre Dame and Pittsburgh at noon. Appreciate all the happy Veterans Day wishes in the YouTube chat right now. And, of course, again, back at any and all veterans who are listening. We appreciate everybody's service. I
well.
saw this one. I was reading this column in The Athletic today. And so UCLA obviously has a head coaching vacancy after they fired their head coach earlier this season. So this guy got a records, requested, email because UCLA is a state school. So he got to see like people who were sending in resumes, applications for the UCLA head coaching job. So there's this guy named Sean Peak who applies for the job at UCLA. What are Sean Peak's qualifications? Should use air quotes with qualifications. Well, the guy emphasized that he has won 6 EA Sports College Football National Championships in dynasty mode, mind you, in dynasty mode, not just any mode. He says, quote, "I simply don't lose," end quote. He also detailed how he maxed out his entire roster with 99 overall ratings and is consistently signing 5-star recruits. Quote from Sean Peak, the applicant, "I am confident that my digital dominance can translate directly to the Rose Bowl turf. My leadership style is simple. Go for 2 every time, run Hail Marys on first down, and always, always make sure my players look good in alternate uniforms. Please let me know when I can expect my headset, whistle, and university credit card for recruiting trips." This is an actual application for the UCLA head coaching vacancy. Rate that effort on a scale of 1 to 10, Jesse.
Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 effort, but what that screams to me is almost that's a 10 out of 10 effort for me, but what that screams more so is who set him up to do this. This feels like a guy who lost his fantasy football and had to send in an application, or, maybe there's something there. There's more to this. I don't think he just submitted this for the fun of it. Maybe he did. And I truly think it's funny.
You don't think that guys like this apply for every vacancy that comes open, that there's some guy who's either a fantasy football genius or, he's doing this, he's the great play caller on the video on Madden or
no, that's
whatever.
An even better resume is if you can say I have like 5 straight dynasty fantasy football championships, that could be even more impressive. But no, you're right. I think that there are guys out there who are constantly, spamming these applications, partially for the fun of it, but also hoping to get, some feedback back.
It's like Ben Affleck shows up at the interview on Good Will Hunting with the white socks, and he's kicking back, and he's like, "Heretofore," like, put it in this hand and whatever. Like, would you be tempted? I rate the effort on a 10 out of 10. Obviously, very creative. How serious he was. You're right. Like, was this guy actually serious, or was it some prank just to see if it got through, to see if he heard anything back? Could be the latter. I tend to think that there's probably a very specific percentage of people who literally think because they're winning on the video games that they're qualified to be a football coach as well. If you're the AD, would you be curious just to see what this guy looked like? Would you at least like do a Zoom conference, like spend 10 to 15 minutes with this guy in a Zoom call just to see what he looked like? Or would
I think at the end of the day, you can at least have fun with it. Give the guy 10, 15 minutes, maybe have him pull up some of this EA Sports and see what he's all about. I think that there would be some fun kind of, what's the word, like giving acknowledgement to it, or kind of, playing around with it a little bit. Why not?
Yeah, I agree. Fill in the blank. The New York Giants firing head coach Brian Daboll while keeping general manager Joe Schoen is blank.
It's hilarious. Some of these recent, teams feel like they're in this constant purgatory state of they just can't figure it out. And if you're the Giants, how did you draft Jackson Dart and Cam Scatteraboo, who were very like players that your head coach Daboll wanted, and then you're going to fire him mid-season, knowing that he's one of the best quarterback developers in the game right now? He developed Josh Allen before he left. to become the Giants head coach. And then I told you this the other day. It's like you're getting mad at the guy when you, as the GM, traded Saquon Barkley within the division and watched the Eagles win a Super Bowl. You're going to fire someone.
He didn't trade him. He let him walk. Yeah. I
right.
mean,
Sorry. Let him walk.
What I was going to say.
You didn't even get anything out of it.
Brian Daboll is not on national TV, like when, on Hard Knocks, when all this stuff went down, with the biggest blunder of the century, letting Saquon Barkley walk and then go to a division rival and win a Super Bowl the next year. Like there is much more egg. Like Joe Schoen came off as, a nice enough guy, but a very aw shucks guy and a guy who is in over his head on that show. That's not how Brian Daboll comes off. And I feel like if you're going to let Daboll draft a quarterback, get his guy, he's still a rookie. And by the way, they're playing better, even though they're not winning games. And look, they're in a division. They're a division rival of a team, like we root against the New York Giants, but I think Brian Daboll is better at his job than Joe Schoen is better at his job. So personally, I think they fired the wrong guy.
Yeah. Like, again, what I get, I think what they're frustrated with is the Giants have been in some close games and they've kind of blown all of them late in the fourth. I mean, what do you expect? You have a young team. Like you have Jackson Dart as your quarterback. Let's not forget Daboll took them to the playoffs within the last 3 or 4 years, So it's like, I don't know, just to completely give up on the guy after you committed all of those resources to the draft of kind of who your head coach wanted. This is why I think the NFL is kind of a sloppy business at times, because now you're going to get a new head coach. Are they going to be all on board with Scadaboo and Jackson Dart and everything? So it's like you see too much turnover.
Yep, exactly. I agree. I was shocked by the fact that they pulled the plug when they did, regardless of how many games they've lost on the road and everything else. All right, well, we're going to have to wrap it up with that. Jesse, good stuff as always. Everyone in the chat, good stuff as always. Again, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. I know we've got a lot of listeners and viewers. Appreciate your service, of course. And again, you're welcome to everyone who's not a veteran who got the day off today. Jesse, I will talk to you later. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you Friday. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat, IrishBreakdown.com.